Now we have Robert Khachikyan. Robert, you should be able to share the screen at this point.
All right, thank you, David, for that. And hello, everybody. So we discussed quite a few about the site logs and the stations and who they are. But it is also important to keep the importance of the metadata that's also captured for each station as a station lives throughout its life. We've had stations in the network that were installed from the 2000s and to quite a while, the ones in 90s and maybe even before that. So keep this presentation brief just to give you brief insight into how a site log looks and what it is. And it's a little bit about the site log manager, the first one that we built, a little bit history on that and how it came to be and what it's doing. And during this summer, we were happy to have gotten our summer intern, Ben, who will discuss the site log manager 2.0 advantages and the technologies used for that. So without further ado, we'll move forward. As you can see, this is just a snippets of the site log that I've captured. You can see it is a flat file, flat ASCII file that has station information of the fields to filled out, of when it was filled out, the identification, and we have also the receivers. As you can see, this particular receiver in the Caribbean ABMF has gone through 23 iterations of a receiver configuration update, not necessarily the receiver, but perhaps the receiver and or the firmware update to that has given additional abilities to it. And also we track the antenna too. You can see this particular station went through, we're at the 4.3 section of the antenna, and those are the information. So each station in the IGS network has this information and a lot more. From the link, you can go at any time if you want to browse over, you can see all the information that's captured. But this is just a snippet of what's there, the format that's available. And then we looked to said, okay, so we have to come up with a tool to better moderate and to better be a little bit more intuitive for our site log managers and the station operators that want to have a way of keeping this data up to date. So then we built the site log manager 1.0, the first one, the current active one that's currently in use. And this is a little bit more sophisticated, and it is an intuitive tool that's used for the site logs and for the station operators. It gives the operators the ability to log in from their web browser. And I have some snapshots on the next slides. You'll see the list of stations for each user and their ability to update it. This software that we built has a MySQL database engine. All the information that you saw from the previous slide is kept in a site log database, in a MySQL database in a site log. And it is a PHP built framework. And this software also has the ability to allow users to upload an entire site log. If the entire text ASCII site log, they can update it, we parse through it, we detect the changes to see what was changed, do the validation check on that, and then let the user know whether what needs to be corrected, if anything, and to proceed on moving on to the next steps. It also gives the station operators the flexibility of updating a specific section. So they need not themselves keep the ASCII log file to their own storage area for their own specifics, but they can come to our web server and they just click on add a section of a particular receiver or an antenna, and they can just update that particular section. Again, upon submission of that, we perform validation checks just to make sure everything they have selected. And as David said, we have to ensure that the equipment that you have selected to use is approved by the IGS network. And upon submission, everything is done. Once everything is validated, everything is given all the green lights, and the similar text file as we saw in the previous slide is updated and is made available on the FTP server for users to download the new version of it. So moving along, this is a snapshot of users logging in to see as users when they log in, immediately they're seeing the registration page, which the registration to the SLM is conducted by our network coordinator. So we must communicate with him just to make sure that all the credentials are there. The login page is securely tied to the database. And when I look through the database, we have registered 132 agencies within our SiteLock agent database, and also along with it 129 registered users. This might be from users that have registered for submitting or proposing the stations list, as well as with the active agencies that have come on. So once the station operator logs in, they are immediately given a list of all the stations. On the left column, this is the view you're seeing at is if an administrator logs in. So I can see 744 stations that are in our database, not necessarily Digest network, but just a database, which includes a couple of the test sites that you might see there, and the active stations alongside with the inactive stations, the stations that have long been decommissioned, retired, or proposed. So some of the tools that we provide for the network coordinator, you can see those emblems with the red, the amber, and the yellow. These are tools that we developed to show the network coordinator or whoever is looking into this, that some of the fields that are required, for example, the red, the field that is required but is not filled in, or some of the fields that might have some errors into them. So that's just an aggregate count of that particular station of what is needed. And for the amber, we see some numbers which are this is what we categorize as the preferred station inconsistencies. Some of the areas where the information is preferred but is not actually required. And the yellow is for the test sites. That's the ones that when the user submits a query but saves them but does not yet submit it for the station for the network coordinator to review or to moderate the submission. So for this particular station ABMF, the same one that I selected on the Caribbean, the user would just click on the receiver and they're given the 3.23, the existing one they have right now that's currently active. And if they want to add something new, they click on the add new section, and they have the ability to add the 3.24. And also the same exists with the antenna. Same methodology, same concept, same workflow. You just click on all the other sections for anything that you want, and the station operator would have the chance to select that particular one and update it. Click on the submit button, which would trigger a point to the network coordinator to respond to that. So moving along, so we've had some the SiteLock Manager was built probably some 10 plus years ago, utilizing the technology of the 10 plus years ago. So this it was custom built for PHP version 5.0, and we know the 5.0 end of life was the 1st of January 2 years ago. So it has its own vulnerabilities and security. So like it or not, we cannot use that software. And because the SiteLock Manager 1.0 was custom built for the version 5.0, there are specific routines and functions and and methods of how it was written that is no longer supported in 7. And as a result of the developer who developed this some 10 plus years ago is no longer available, when we migrated over to our AWS on the cloud and updated to the PHP version 7.0, we discovered that some of the areas was not supported. So we went on to the cycle of trying to patch to get things working, trying to have things working through. But then we saw that because of the way it was built, we were just spending too much time on just trying to patch the software. And also it was becoming a little inefficient because there was just too many patches going on. And with all of that combined and our discussions with other networks to have our databases to integrate it from one to the other to provide interoperability, it was time that we had to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, we need something that is of this era. We need a technology that uses today's methods and how things are done, and to try to make that moving forward. And that's where the Sitelog Manager 2.0 idea was hatched. And that's where we were happy to have our summer intern, Ben, join in with us. He'll talk about some of the details of and the technology that we're using and we're pursuing with the 2.0. And with that, I'll pass that back to Myra so she can give it to Ben.
Ben,
Thank you.
you should be, thank you, Robert.